Hey there, my name is Mara Kasarik, and I absolutely love exploring online courses, passive income, and running a profitable online business. I'm an online course designer and strategist who left her 9-to-5 in her 20s to start a small business, and that tiny little business has grown up over the years and now provides me a regular six-figure income. On this podcast, I pull back the curtain of what it takes to create, launch, and run a thriving online course that helps your students achieve their dreams and allows you to grow your passive income too. Here you'll find launch strategy, marketing advice, curriculum design, and so much more about what it takes to create a better course. I'll also share a behind-the-scenes look at what it takes to start and run a successful online business. I'm sharing everything I've learned along the way, and I'm not afraid to get honest about the things I'm still learning and navigating. If you're ready to impact other people's lives through online courses and make some money too, pull up a seat, grab a cup of coffee, and get ready to dive in. Hello, welcome back to the podcast. Today we're talking about productivity and maximizing your time so that you're not stuck working all day. As my business has grown, time has become by far the most valuable resource, and I think one of the secrets to growing a successful business is learning how to use your time as efficiently as possible so that you can get the things done that have the maximum impact on your business and also your income. Also, I think most of us don't want to be working all of the time. The reason we started a business was to have the freedom to take the afternoon off or have a really slow morning. Maximizing your productivity gives you the freedom to have those time periods where you don't have to do anything when you're not working, which is so good. Today, I'm sharing a few of my favorite productivity tips and secrets that have helped me be a really efficient business owner to the point where I get compliments all the time about how much I am able to get done, which honestly feels a little silly to me because I still feel like I battle procrastination and distraction a lot of the time. But I do have some things that have really helped me work smarter, not harder, and also push through some of those moments where I'm feeling a lot of resistance and I don't want to work on the things that I really should be working on. My first tip for you is to use a timer cube. I will put a link in the show notes, or if you go to marakasarik.com/timer, you can see the exact one I use. Sometimes I share it on Instagram and people always ask me what it is and where you can buy it, but basically it is a physical timer, like a kitchen timer that you would set and it counts down and then it beeps when the time is up. But instead of typing in the time or instead of it being, those dials where you turn and then it ticks and chimes at the end, it is a square cube, and on each side of the cube are different numbers, and whichever number is facing up, it counts down from that number. So the timer cube that I have, there is a 60-minute side, a 5-minute side, 15, and then 30 minutes. And you can buy these timer cubes at different intervals. So if you want different spacing, you can look it up, and they probably have one on Amazon. But this works so well at helping me focus. I keep my timer cube on my desk, and first it acts as a physical reminder to start working. When I sit down at my desk, I literally see it sitting there, and it reminds me, oh yeah, you should probably be doing something productive, Mara. It also helps me start tasks that feel overwhelming. So pretty much all day, what I will do is I will use the 30-minute side. I will flip it over to the 30-minute side. It'll count down from 30 minutes, and I will work for 30 minutes. And then when it goes off, I take a couple minutes to walk around. I might do a short break, like reading a book or going on a short walk outside. What I'm describing to you right now is called the Pomodoro method, which is a very popular productivity method. I highly recommend looking it up, but it's where you work in timed intervals And then after every timed session, you have a shorter break. And then usually after 4 sessions, you have a longer break. So I do a modified version of that with my timer cube. I will set it to 30 minutes. I work. Usually when it goes off, I put a star, or sometimes I use stickers like I am in kindergarten to mark off that I've done one, because I find it very motivating to see my progress throughout the day and see how many I can get in. I take a break and then I go back and start working again. And it just works so well for me because 30 minutes never feels that overwhelming. It always feels like, oh, 30 minutes isn't that bad. Just work on whatever the thing is that you're supposed to be doing, Mara, for 30 minutes. And then usually by that time, I'm kind of in the groove. I come back from my break and it's easier to keep working. I also really like using the 5-minute and the 15-minute side of the timers for tasks I really don't want to do. So sometimes if I need to send an email and I'm just dreading and avoiding it, I will use the 5-minute side and just tell myself, okay, just write a rough draft of the email for 5 minutes. Or if there's like a house chore I don't want to do, I will use the 5-minute side or the 15-minute side to clean or organize something. And 5 minutes is usually enough that I can convince myself to do it. And at the end of the 5 minutes, usually I've done enough that I don't feel so overwhelmed. I feel like I have a more clear plan of action. So I use that all the time. I highly recommend, if you don't feel like doing something, just telling yourself start with 5 minutes. So my timer cube, I take it everywhere with me. Every time I show someone about it, they want to know where I got it, and I have converted a lot of my business friends to start using timer cubes as well. I really like that it is a physical timer. I used to use an app on my phone that did something similar, but what would happen is when the timer would go off, I would go on my phone to turn off the timer, and then I would get distracted on my phone. So now I can hide my phone from myself during my workday and just use the physical timer, which is a lot less distracting than using like my phone or an app on my computer, which there's a lot of options if you want to try those out. But I've really found having something physical to be the most effective method. Tip number 2 is to give yourself a free space on your to-do list. So honestly, this is going to sound a little silly as I start explaining it to you, but it is very effective. You know, in bingo, when at the center of your card, there's a free space that you can check off. That's what I want you to do for your to-do list. So every day, I write on my to-do list free space. Like I literally write that on a line that I can check off. Or sometimes I will write something that is so easy to do, there is no way I won't accomplish it. Like in the past, I've said, wake up, which obviously I'm going to wake up if I'm looking at my to-do list. Or sometimes I'll do drink coffee because there's no way I'm not going to have a cup of coffee in the morning. The idea, though, is that when you get to your desk for the day or when you first look at your to-do list for the day, you already have something to check off. And this works so well. There are a ton of studies out there that once you start checking things off on your list, your brain wants to keep going. It makes your brain happy. It releases the endorphins. Plus, it helps you not procrastinate. Sometimes I avoid starting my workday because it just feels a little overwhelming and scary. But if I have a task very first on my list that is super easy to do, I basically trick myself into starting for the day. And once I've started, it's so much easier to keep going. You may have heard of that method called Eat the Frog, which is a very popular productivity method where you are supposed to do the biggest and the most important and also the most overwhelming task on your list first thing in the day. Well, I'm telling you to eat the teddy bear. Do something super easy or literally give yourself a free space so that there is no way you won't check it off. And then you start the day feeling productive and it really carries throughout the rest of your day. Okay, tip number 3, block distractions. You guys, when I say block distractions, I mean I am ruthless about cutting distractions out of my working day because I am a very easily distracted person, and left up to my own free will, I will go down a rabbit hole every single day. So I literally block all of the things that are distracting from my life. A couple of examples of this, I have downtime on my phone, which is a free feature if you have an iPhone. There are a lot of apps for Androids that do something similar, but basically I have it set up where from 9 p.m. to 8 a.m. every day on my phone, I can only get text messages from a very few select people. Basically, it's just my husband and then one of my friends and then a couple of family members. And then almost all of the apps on my phone are blocked. There are a few I can still use, like I can use my calculator. I have a yoga app that I can use. I have like some Kindle reading apps so that I can read books on my phone if I want to. All of those I still have access to after 9 p.m. But all of the fun stuff goes away. So YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, my email too. I can't access any of that on my phone after 9 p.m. And there is a screen time password that I can put in to override that, but I actually don't know what my password is. My husband set it, and that way, if there, for some reason, is an emergency, which I can still receive calls, by the way, people can call my husband if they need to, but if there's some sort of emergency where I really needed access to something on my phone that was blocked, I can just ask him what the password is. But I find I'm a lot more accountable if I don't know what the passcode is. In the past, I've set it up where I use a PIN number that I know, and I just get in the habit of typing it in really fast, and it becomes a habit to override the downtime all the time, which is not helpful. And then that downtime goes through 8 a.m., which I wake up usually at 5 in the morning. So then that way I have 3 hours in the morning where I can't get super distracted. So instead of going on YouTube or scrolling Instagram Reels endlessly, which is what I will do without blocking things on my phone, I naturally read a book now or I work out because everything fun on my phone is blocked. And so this really helps me, one, get to bed a lot earlier at night. I used to get really distracted by my phone before bed, and that's when my willpower is the lowest. So the later it gets in the day, the more likely I just want to keep scrolling the internet. And I also have a bad habit of sometimes working later into the night. So blocking my email, I block Slack messages. This really helps me wind down for the day and make it to bed on time. And then the second thing it helps with is it helps me get a better start to my day. Like I mentioned, I don't start my day by consuming social media, so I use that time to be more productive, and I also tend to procrastinate starting work a lot less because I'm not distracted by my phone. I also use other tools to help me block distractions throughout the day. There's a Chrome extension called Block Site that I've used a lot in the past, and you can block different websites, so like social media, or sometimes I will block things like Amazon or Chewy where you buy dog food because I don't want to get distracted doing like errand online shopping type of stuff during the day. I also use a tool for my email called SaneBox, SANE box, and it has a ton of features to help you manage your inbox. But one of my favorite features is that all of the emails I receive before 9 a.m., it puts them into a special folder. And then after 9 a.m., it pulls them out of the folder and puts them into my inbox. So basically, even if I check my email on my computer really early in the day, I don't see any of the emails that came in overnight or emails that people send me really early in the morning. And I like to do that because early morning, I usually start work around 6 a.m., which I know is not everyone's cup of tea, but it is how I work the best. So early morning between like 6 and 9 a.m. is when I get most of my work done. It is the most productive time of the day, and if I get distracted by email, I get less done. So I literally hide all of my emails from myself, and then at 9 a.m., which typically I wait a little longer than 9 a.m., but then I can go in and I can do inbox time and respond to everything. My next tip is to reevaluate meal prep and cooking. So I know this isn't a new concept, but this is something that saves me so much time and energy every single week. And I think it's one of the reasons why I've been able to grow my business over 6 figures without having this large team. I'll tell you what works for me, but there are so many ways you can save time around cooking and food, like grocery delivery, for example. We used to use Instacart all the time. And even with higher Instacart prices with their extra service fees, I tracked our budget 1 month where we did grocery delivery and then 1 month where we did not do grocery delivery. And the month where we had the groceries delivered was cheaper than the month where we went to the store because there were so many less impulse purchases and we didn't buy stuff that we actually had at home and we had just forgotten about. At this time, we don't use Instacart as much because we live really close to the grocery store and it's pretty easy to pop over, but that's something that was very helpful in the early days of my business. What I do use though is HelloFresh or one of those meal delivery services. So my husband and I have used HelloFresh pretty much consecutively every single week for the last 2 years. Yes, we are those weird people who actually use HelloFresh. It's something we pay for almost every single week. Sometimes we do skip a week, and it saves us so much time. It's insane how much time it saves us, not just on cooking the food because they give you all of the ingredients and then you have really simple instructions. So we do save a lot of time cooking, but planning and figuring out what to eat, we save so much time. I used to do weekly meal prep where on Sunday I would plan out all of the meals we were going to eat for the week, and then we would have to go buy the groceries and you'd have to cook all of the recipes and like put it all into containers, and then you had all of these dishes that you had to do, which was super time consuming and overwhelming. So now we don't have to do that. Instead, we go in once every 6 weeks and my husband and I will sit down, we will pick our meals for the next 6 weeks, and then we're done for 6 weeks, which is so amazing and helpful. It's also really nice if we're traveling or if we have guests, we can just get a delivery whenever is convenient, or if there's company at our house, we just add on meals to our box so that way we don't have to do a bunch of extra grocery shopping when we have guests here. Your answer to meal prep and cooking doesn't have to be something like HelloFresh, though I do recommend giving one of those services a try because I was very against them in the past, and now that I've used it, I cannot believe the amount of time and energy that I have regained by not constantly thinking about what to eat and trying to plan it and trying to figure out the right recipes and the right proportions. There are so many different ways, though, you can make meal prep and cooking and the cleaning easier. And I know this isn't something directly related to business, but it has a huge impact on your working hours and your energy. As a bonus tip, I also highly recommend a robot vacuum. I resisted getting one for so long, and now Alfred vacuums for us every day. Our vacuum's name is Alfred, by the way, because he is our butler and he helps the entire house stay cleaner. We just have him run once a day at noon. Usually I'm not even home because I'm out walking my dogs, and it's amazing how much cleaner the rest of the house stays because there's not dust floating around or crumbs. We still do a weekly deep cleaning vacuum with the actual vacuum, but day to day having a robot vacuum has really simplified some of that household cleaning stuff. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is cutting down on meetings, and this is one I am very passionate about. This is something so many people resist, but it helps so much. I'm very intentional about the meetings I take on, and I actually find most meetings are not productive. They feel productive. It feels productive to schedule a meeting, and it feels like that's the best way to communicate, but it's really Not true. Most of the time what happens is there's a lot of small talk. It's hard to have a clear agenda. The meeting goes over. You waste a bunch of time getting ready for the meeting. Then you waste a bunch of energy on the meeting. And then you have to get off of the meeting and type out notes or decipher it into actual to-do list items. You can have really efficient communication over email and messaging apps like Slack. And I'm not saying don't ever have a meeting. I absolutely have meetings with my clients all the time, but I really try to cut down on the number of meetings. I don't find it very helpful to have a weekly meeting or a daily meeting. I've had some people who that's what they do on their team, and it just takes up so much time, and it makes it really hard to focus if your day is interrupted by meetings. So I recommend really evaluating the meetings you take on and being kind of strict about them. Personally, I don't do meetings on Mondays or Fridays. And when I announced this, because I very early on in my business made the mistake of having meetings all the time. I was available all hours of the day, 5 days a week. And then I was really frustrated because I feel like I couldn't get a lot done during the day. So when I wanted to move towards, I'm not going to meet on Mondays or Fridays, I thought it was going to be more complicated than it was. All I did was block it off on my calendar. I didn't have to make a big announcement or some grand gesture. I just blocked it off on my calendar. And if someone asked, I just said, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm not available then. And you know what happens? People don't push back. They just find another day to schedule the meeting. And there are times where I will every once in a great while schedule a meeting on Monday or Friday, but it's very few and far between. And that allows me to really focus on Monday and Friday. And I'm not getting perfectly Zoom ready with hair and makeup or thinking about the meeting or wondering, oh, well, I have an hour before the meeting. What can I do in that time to be productive? I just have the entire day to work and focus and know I'm not going to be interrupted. I also usually don't do meetings before 10 a.m. because 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. is usually when I'm by far the most productive. So I don't want that time to go to meetings. And then I don't do a lot of meetings after 3 p.m. I just get really tired and low energy. So I try to avoid meetings at times where I'm not going to be able to show up as the best version of myself. The next thing I want to share is having a spot where you collect all of the random things that people tell you to do. So in my business, I often will think of things that I need to do in the future, like, oh, I should do a podcast episode on productivity tips, or, oh, I need to fix this thing on my website. And then the other thing that happens is clients tell me future things they want to do. And sometimes it's something we need to do in 2 weeks. Sometimes it's something we need to do in 6 months. So my recommendation is having a spot where you park all of that stuff as it's coming up throughout the week, because it can be very overwhelming and it can become this big distraction in your business. It doesn't really matter where you keep all of the things, but just that when you have a dedicated spot where when someone tells you something, you can instantly put it right there. And that's super helpful because you also won't forget about it. All the time, my clients are like, wow, Mara, you have an amazing memory. How did you remember that thing that you told me 3 months ago? The answer is because I write it down immediately in a very simple spot, so it doesn't take a lot of time. And then I evaluate that list once a week. So how this works for me is I have a bullet journal. So it's basically a notebook. And each week I write out my to-do list for the entire week. And then at the very end of my weekly list, I have a spot that says next week. And throughout the week, anytime I think of something or anytime a client tells me something, I add it to next week. And then on Sunday, when I'm planning my week, I go through my next week list and I sort through it. And if it is actually something that I need to do next week, then I put it on the upcoming week list. Or if it's something that's more long-term, I file it in the appropriate spot. So I put it on my calendar, I set a reminder, something like that, so I can follow up on it in the future. And that really helps me not get distracted by all of this stuff during the week, and then also not forget about all of it and have this time where I'm sorting and organizing and processing it all at one time. And I'm not constantly trying to do that when someone tells me it right in the moment. My next tip is to choose a top 3 every single month, every single week, and then every single day. So this is just where you pick out the top 3 tasks that are the most important for you to do, no matter what else happens. These are the 3 things you need to get done. I choose these each month, each week, and each day in my business. Honestly, it took me a pretty long time to get in the habit of choosing a top 3 each day. I used to have a reminder on my phone every single morning that said, choose your top 3. And it took 6 months to a year to get in the habit of being like, okay, yeah, what are my top 3 for the day? I also started using the full focus planner, and it has a spot for your top 3 at the very top of your to-do list page. And that's been so helpful because stuff comes up all the time during the week, and it can just be a little challenging to organize what's really important in the moment. But if you have a top 3 list, you can refer back to that and remind yourself of, oh, what is actually important for me to be doing? And I have found that very helpful at cutting down on distractions, cutting down on all of the busy work that someone asks me to do, but it's not the thing that's really going to help sell an online course or help grow my business. Having a top 3 just really helps remind you of what's important for that day. Also, it makes me feel a lot more accomplished, which is really important to be able at the end of the day to say, hey, I actually did something valuable, because sometimes before I did this top 3 thing, I would feel busy all day doing things. But at the end of the day, I didn't really feel like I accomplished anything big. So having a top 3 helps me feel like, okay, yes, I'm making big, valuable progress on bigger projects, and I'm not just stuck in all of the busy work. One last tip for you is if you're feeling like you really don't want to work, or there's something you're really procrastinating at the moment, like there's a task that you just really don't want to do, I recommend sometimes giving yourself anything counts time. So what this is instead of forcing yourself to work on a task that you just really don't want to do, which obviously there's going to be times where you just have to do it, but sometimes it's not a task that is urgent. It's something you could maybe do later in the day. Shift into anything counts as productivity. So that's what I tell myself when I really don't feel like working. I will say, okay, Mara, it's okay if you don't do that thing that's on your to-do. So this is what I will shift into if I just really don't feel like working. I will say, okay, Mara, it's okay that you don't want to do that thing that's on your to-do list, but what else can we achieve that would be productive? And anything counts. So starting my laundry, and anything counts. So really small tasks count, like starting my laundry, telling my robot vacuum to start, just cleaning out my inbox really quickly, fixing something really simple on my website. Just anything I can think of counts as being productive, and I lean into it. And this really helps me not let my to-do list get completely out of control, because even if I don't feel like working or I'm really avoiding a task, at least I'm doing something. And often what will happen is I will get enough stuff, like of the little stuff done, that I will feel a little more accomplished, and I'll feel ready to tackle the thing that I was avoiding in the first place. So there you go. Those are some of my favorite productivity tips. And just to review at the end of this episode, I'm going to list them out again for you. And as a bit of accountability, think of just one of these that you could try to implement this week. You do not need to do all of these. I find it so helpful to experiment with productivity and to try on things that other people are doing in their business. That's how I've grown my business and gotten better at time management, is I'm constantly trying things that other people are doing or experimenting with how I'm working. So to review, here are the tips that I covered in this episode. 1, get a timer cube. 2, give yourself a free space on your to-do list. 3, block distractions. 4, make meal prepping and meal planning easier. 5, cut down on meetings. 6, have a spot for future to-dos. 7, choose a top 3 each month, each week, and each day. And then number 8, let yourself relax a little bit sometimes. Go easy on yourself when you're procrastinating, and just tell yourself that you can take action on anything and it counts as being productive. Before you go, I'm also going to share 3 really common productivity tips that I hear all the time, and I do not do these things in my business. Productivity is so different for each person, and not everything works for every person. So I thought it would be interesting to share some of the common pieces of advice I hear all the time, and they are just things that do not work for me. The first one is having themed days. So I'm talking about where you have like Monday is social media day, and Tuesday is content creation, and Wednesday is like accounting or bookkeeping. So basically you have a schedule each week of certain tasks you're going to do. I have tried this so many times in my business, and every time I just hate it. It feels really constricting to me. I also run a business that needs to be a little flexible. I'm often doing client launches or doing client work, and no day looks the same. And honestly, I don't really want to do the same thing every Tuesday. I get why this works for a lot of people, but for me, it just feels really constricting and not fun to force myself to a weekly schedule. Number 2 is I don't have a house cleaner. I hear this tip a lot where people say, oh, are you feeling busy in your business? You should hire someone to clean your house, which is probably fantastic. I have never tried it, honestly. It might be something I do try in the future, but it's not something I do. I try to focus on making the household stuff as easy as possible. So like having a robot vacuum, I have a cleaning caddy so that it's really easy to carry it around and clean whatever I need to clean. I try not to get distracted by cleaning during the day, and my husband and I have a pretty good split of who does what chores, but I've never tried having a house cleaner. I think it's something that could be helpful, but for me, it feels distracting to have someone else in my home while I'm working. So I just wanted to share that one because a lot of business owners talk about how they have someone clean their house regularly, and that's how they're able to work so much. And if you're just not in a season of life where that makes sense financially or for other reasons, I don't think it's something you need to be successful. And then the third thing I don't do is I do not time block my days. So I do not sit down and plan out my days and say, okay, from 8 to 9, I'm doing this. From 9 to 10, I'm doing this. I have tried that and I just absolutely hate it. It takes a decent amount of time to figure out, not a ton of time, but I don't like sitting down at the beginning of the day and trying to figure out when I'm going to feel like doing certain things. I do write down things that are time specific. So if I have a meeting, I write that down that I need to go to the meeting at 10. But other than that, I don't plan out when I'm going to be working on certain things, just that I'm going to be working in general. And then I choose the top priority task or the task that I feel like doing in the moment. And for me, that works a lot better. That gives me a lot more freedom. And I feel like it doesn't take as long to actually plan out my day. A few times I've tried to do different exercises and practices where you plan out your entire week before the week starts on your calendar, or you plan out your entire day hour by hour the night before, and it's just not something that I enjoy doing or something that has worked for me. I hope this episode was helpful, and I hope you'll be able to implement some of these tips in your own life and business. And if you have anything that you find really helpful, just as far as making life easier, working harder, and if you have anything that you have found really helpful in your business or life around productivity or making your life easier or working smarter, not harder, I would love to hear it. I'm always experimenting and trying out new things, so you can send me a DM on Instagram at Mara Kasarik or shoot me an email, and I would love to know your thoughts. Hey there, friend. You made it all the way to the end of the episode, and I am so incredibly grateful and appreciative that you're still here. I hope this episode really helped you dive in deeper, and if you want to hear more about online business, course creation, and growing passive income, then you'll want to hit that subscribe button so you never miss a new episode. I release one every single week. I will see you on the next episode.